this announcement. Today we have before us, we have Mark Hancock, President of CUPE British Columbia, along with Paul Farrow, Secretary Treasurer of CUPE BC. We also have Leo McGrady, Counsel for CUPE. Also Andrew Ledger, President of CUPE Local 1004, and Frank Lee, Secretary Treasurer of CUPE Local 1004. And we'll begin with Brother Mark Hancock.
Thanks, Nathan. Hi, my name is Mark Hancock, and I'm the President of CUPE British Columbia Division. I'd like to thank the members of our Executive Board for attending this conference, and also to the media workers who are here covering this announcement. CUPE BC is announcing that yesterday we filed a libel lawsuit against the Vancouver Nonpartisan Association and Kirk LaPointe. In the recent Vancouver election, NPA mayoral candidate Kirk LaPointe and the NPA electoral organization alleged corruption in regards to the financial contributions made by CUPE Local 1004 and CUPE BC to candidates recommended by our membership. Myself and Secretary Treasurer Paul Farrow met with the Executive Board of CUPE BC, and we decided to pursue legal action. The libel of CUPE and the individual plaintiffs, myself, Paul Farrow, and Frank Lee, the Secretary-Treasurer of CUPE Local 1004, by the NPA and Kirk LaPointe, is one of the most extreme forms of libel recognized by the law. Their publications repeatedly accuse CUPE of criminal misconduct and libels us in our profession and our occupation. It also affects the ability of our union to engage in collective bargaining on behalf of our members. Kirk LaPointe is an adjunct professor of ethics and journalism at UBC. Yet he made no effort to conduct even a minimal inquiry into the truth of these accusations. CUPE will be seeking an injunction, the removal of the offending language from websites, and substantial general damages, as well as punitive damages. As Nathan said, we have with us here our legal counsel, Leo McGrady, who will speak more on the details of the legal action that CUPE is pursuing. And ask Leo to speak.
Thanks, Mark. So, some of you may have a copy of the claim and the plaintiffs, as you can see, include a number of individual plaintiffs, as well as CUPE 1004 and CUPE BC, all of whom the evidence indicates were seriously damaged by the libel that was published by the NPA and by Kirk LaPointe. The claim is broken into four parts determined by the dates of the publication. They start October the 19th and carry through to November the 4th. And the publication that appears to have originated the libel, but which didn't appear to be libelous itself, was an article that appeared electronically and in print in the Vancouver Courier. And if it was simply the content of that article that was the subject of subsequent publications in the province on the NPA website, we would have had little concern over the content. I mean, it raised the issue very properly of campaign contributions. And CUPE has no difficulty with a vigorous debate over the propriety or otherwise of campaign contributions. Everyone's taken a position on it. CUPE's taken a position that it favors it as long as it applies with equal force to developers and corporations as well as to unions. But it's not prepared to engage in withholding of funds if it's doing it unilaterally, which is fair enough. But it does encourage debate over it. And that debate, we think, is probably protected by the Charter guarantees of free speech. And the Supreme Court of Canada has said it recently in a number of key free speech decisions that free speech in the context of election debate is absolutely at the core of a democratic way of life. And CUPE was is very much aware of those principles of law and very supportive of it. But where these publications that we're suing over departed from the norm and became libelous is the allegation that what CUPE did was, quote, corruption, and was corrupt. And that word, by definition, involves illegal conduct. And it was not illegal conduct that CUPE and other unions engaged in this campaign and indeed in other campaigns. You may have your criticisms of the conduct, you may have your own views on it, but it cannot be said as a matter of law that in any sense it was corrupt, it was quite legal. Now, there's been a range of publications about that subsequent to Mr. Macklin's publication. Much of it is healthy. There was an article in a blog, for example, called City Watch, which sets out both sides of the issues and has a critical perspective on it. The same with the Globe and Mail and the same with some other publications. But where the NPA material differs from these other materials that raise and debate the issue is the allegation of corruption. That's our main complaint with the publication. We have others. We think that the NPA publication deliberately, or if not deliberately, negligently misstated what was in the Macklin report. And if you look at the material that was published by NPA, it looks as though you have Councillor Meigs talking about contracting out, immediately followed by the union officer talking about money. And if you listen to the actual tape that Mr. Macklin published, you'll see that that simply wasn't so. But it was presented in that fashion because, of course, it makes parties look, quote, corrupt in the mind of NPA. But it's absolutely misleading, at least negligently misleading, perhaps more, perhaps worse, but it's certainly misleading. And in a number of ways. The CUPE speaker was not responding to Councillor Meigs. There were at least 3 other speakers between them, none of whom made it to the NPA material. So there's no discussion about the Parks councillor, the Parks representative, other city councillors on the Vision team. No mention of their discussion. In addition to that, there were a number of other issues debated beyond contracting out. For example, public transit, childcare, the cost of housing. All of those issues attracted the support and have for many years of CUPE. And it wasn't just the contracting out issue that attracted CUPE support, but it was this complex of issues in the campaign that Vision put forward that attracted CUPE's interest and CUPE's support. Now, none of that appears in the NPA material, any of it. You can have a look at it. We set up the text of it in the material. None of that appears, and what it does look like, and it puts it in the worst possible light, Councillor Meigs talking about contracting out, and the CUPE representative saying, oh, well, here's the money we'll go. That's just not what happened. They've recreated reality. There's one other important error, either intentional or negligent, in the material that was published on the NPA website by Mr. LaPointe, and that is, you'll see the word curry, that CUPE was trying to curry favor with Vancouver Vision. Now that's an emotionally charged word, and it implies a kind of craven conduct towards someone who's powerful or in a position of authority from whom you're seeking favors. In fact, the word was somewhat similar, but lacks that emotional content. If you listen to the tape, you'll hear that the word was carry, not curry. Now, as I say, it carries some of the same import, but has none of the negative, adverse emotional content that the word curry has. And if you go also to some of the other media reports, even the Vancouver Courier, it got it right. The language there is carry, not curry, but carry became curry in the NPA literature, presumably because it served their purpose. So those are all reasons why CUPE, after a good deal of consultation amongst its membership and a good deal of thought and reflection, decided to sue. So those are my comments. Thank you, as Mark said, for coming. We appreciate it.
So we're open for any questions.
Yeah, first for me, there's no L in my last name, but I'll forgive you on that one. The horse that CUPE was betting on, Vision 1, the horse that you're betting against, NPA lost, some people might say this is beating a dead horse, that you're not going to get much in the way of damages because you're going to be sitting across from the Vision counselors and Vision negotiators at the bargaining table, and you'll probably get a very favorable settlement, one that you wouldn't have gotten under the NPA. So this does look like, to some people, that you might be beating a dead horse, and this might also dovetail with one of the themes of the BC Fed Convention, which is to campaign against cutbacks to public services after cutting taxes. So is this something else, just a lawsuit, or is this part of a bigger campaign?
Well, I'll answer that if I may, and it's very different from any other campaigns that CUPE or the BC Fed may be conducting. This is a campaign that focuses on the impairment that the CUPE locals, particularly 1004, are going to find at the bargaining table because of these allegations of corruption. And you can imagine being a CUPE bargainer in a municipality like Victoria or Nanaimo and going to the bargaining table, and you can imagine the questions that are going through the mind of your opposing member from management as to what's going on behind his or her back in terms of campaign contributions after these allegations of corruption. That's not going to be resolved by CUPE getting a good contract, CUPE 1004 getting a good contract. In addition to that, and as importantly, the allegations of corruption, they stick. And history has shown, and experience has shown, and the case law has shown, that when allegations are made of that nature, that are very, very serious, of a serious criminal offense, and made against a person in his or her occupation, they stick, they stay around, and they impair careers. They impair possibilities of being rehired or elected again. And so, to answer your question specifically, the remedies that the plaintiffs are seeking in this case aren't going to be addressed by the quality of bargaining that goes on between 1004 and the city. That's a really separate matter from our point of view.
Now, you didn't mention, at least from my quick read, the original story or the recordings that were leaked. And November 13th, the recordings were actually, I received a notice from YouTube that they were deleted from the Canadian YouTube sites. If the recordings are not offending and are perfectly legal, there's no problem. Why did CUPE act in that fashion?
You know, I don't know the answer to that. I wasn't counsel acting for CUPE on that specific case, and I'm sorry, I can't answer it.
But Mr. Farrow and Mr. Hancock would have given direction, or the board would have given direction to whoever it was. Maybe they can answer.
Well, I don't know, but it's not anything to do with this libel. And I've expressed to you my views of are you Mr. Macklin?
Matthew Noel.
Macklin, sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
I told you my views of the work you did, and I thought that you know, you didn't raise corruption. I think in some respects, whoever got you the tape did a public service because it raised a very important issue that goes to the heart of our democracy. And I wish I could answer your question, and maybe that I can find out the answer given enough time, but I don't know, and that's not something that I'm just able to.
But Mr. Farrow, Mr. Hancock, you would have been privy to that direction to whoever the lawyer was.
as we were not, CUPE British Columbia was not privy to those discussions on that matter, and that matter is a separate matter to this case.
But it's the genesis of this case.
Actually, let me just make sure that you understand where this is. So the case regarding the YouTube videos is not part of this application. CUPE British Columbia did not give any direction to the local 1004 on this matter. It's a separate case before the court, so before process in regard to that matter, and it is not tied to this case.
Can you defend that decision though by the local? Because the local comes under you.
The local doesn't come under me, Mr. Mackin. Locals across British Columbia are autonomous locals. We have 170 locals in British Columbia. They are governed by a national constitution which lays the parameters of how they operate. And we will stand behind any one of our locals who makes a decision on behalf of their membership, a democratic decision to take any action. And that decision was made by that local. And again, it's not tied to this application, and making a statement that it is not correct.
Now, I understand there were complaints made to the Vancouver Police regarding Section 123 of the Criminal Code, alleging municipal corruption. Have any of you or anyone in CUPE been contacted by anyone at the Vancouver Police for any evidence or any interviews to talk about this? Will you cooperate with them if you do get contacted?
I'll answer that if I may. That particular complaint we have no knowledge of. I have heard rumors that that may surface. We think it would be largely a waste of police time. I suspect that may be the conclusion that they come to as well. But absolutely, CUPE will cooperate fully. It always does. But as I say, I don't anticipate there's going to be anything to cooperate with. The allegation of violation of Section 123 originated in the NPA material with the word corruption. And if you accept the judgment of other media consultants and other media writers, there's nothing illegal about it. It's the Globe and Mail journalist that said very emphatically, this is not illegal. You may disagree with it. It's unfortunate that this practice goes on, but it's been around a long time. There's absolutely nothing illegal about it.
But it might be for bigger minds than journalists to look at, maybe police or prosecutors, for them to decide. That appears to be the way it's going. At least some citizens have put it forward.
Yeah, and
whether it's got merit or not, it's up to other people.
As counsel explained, we have not been contacted by the police, and if we are contacted by the police, we'll fully participate in that investigation. But I've read it in one bloggers so far, and other than that, we have not heard anything else about Vancouver Police doing any investigation on this matter.
Any other questions?
I guess one more question regarding the process of making these donations to the Political Action Committee. Mr. Lee was the head of that committee. Do any of your union members have any concerns about the way that money was divvied up? For instance, you gave one city, a party with one candidate and no history, more than you gave CUPE, which had a full slate and a big history that goes back to the VDLC days, almost 50 years or so. And that on that committee, the Political Action Committee, sets Kyle Epstein, who's actually on the board of one city. There appears to be a conflict of interest there in the way that those donations were handled.
Yeah, no, our locals are, as Paul said, autonomous, and we have a history of supporting both progressive political parties and progressive candidates, and that's true of communities across the province of BC, especially. And every local has different processes. Sometimes locals will get together and decide on which candidates may be worthy for a variety of different reasons. And we have processes through, we're actually one of the most autonomous democratic organizations, trade unions, that there is in this country, and that our members have the ability to attend local meetings and decide how those locals' dollars will be spent. Because we have a committee, whether it's an executive board or a political action committee, making recommendations. At the end of the day, it's the members of Local 1004 or any other CUPE local in this province that decide how those dollars will be spent. So I reject the notion that there's any conflicts of interest. Ultimately, it's up to our membership to decide in each and every case across this province.
Can Mr. Lee talk to that?
No, I mean, the thing is, that was a decision by the political action committee of the local on how the donations were carried forward.
And it needs to be perfectly clear that all of our donations are within the Elections Act of British Columbia, and our union is following the act as written and as stated. And so all of our donations will be made public as per the Election Act in British Columbia.
I guess a simpler question would be, did the committee know that Kyle Epstein was involved with One City, that political party, when it was deliberating and making a decision on how much to give to One City?
I think a lot of our members are involved in a lot of different political parties. CUPE, Vision, probably have a couple members involved in the NPA party as well. But it's up to, as I said earlier, it's up to our members to decide how those resources will be spent. It's not up to one single person on a committee. It's up to the membership that show up to the general meeting to vote on a recommendation, to accept that recommendation, to change the recommendation, or to turn back that recommendation. So at the end of the day, it's really up to our members.
Can Mr. Lee talk to that, though? It's a question about a possible conflict of interest. Did you know when you made that decision to vote for the dividend of the money?
I'm sorry to interrupt, but this matter is before us today is a matter between the defamation and libel suit against the NPA. You have before you the case put together by Mr. McGrady, our counsel. The matter that you're raising is not related to this, and
it is related to this. It's related to the $70,000 fund you had for the Political Action Committee. Mr. Lee is available here. He's not available every day for me.
Mackin, as I said, all of the contributions made by the Canadian Union of Public Employees were made by democratic decisions by our locals across the province. They are all within the Elections Act of British Columbia, and there needs to be no other comment. What we have done is legal, allowed in this province and in this country.
I'm giving you a chance, Mr. Lee, to address a possible conflict of interest. It's a serious charge, and I'd like to give him a chance.
So also, everyone here is delegates to the BC Federation Labour Convention, which is going to convene soon. So I think that line was exhausted.
Well, Mr. McGrady's here as well, so I want to give him a chance as a lawyer to address that if possible. It's a serious question, sir.
A couple more minutes.
And you know, I want to give you a chance to answer it.
Well, I want to give other questioners a chance as well to ask questions. This gentleman had one a moment ago. You still heard your question, or did it?
Sorry, Eric.
Eric Chen from Mingpao. Just any specific amount of damage you are seeking from the NPA or Mr. Lapone?
A matter of how much damage?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard to know. I know that in some jurisdictions, and this is what we often read in the U.S. and elsewhere in Canada, plaintiffs quantify the value of the damage to the reputation, and so you'll see, $1 million or $100,000 listed in the pleading. That's not the custom of practice here in British Columbia. I don't think I've ever seen that. So I'm not able to put a specific dollar figure to it, but before filing, I did look at material that quantified damage claims over the past year for libel, and then went back historically about 30 years to look at the highest and the lowest. And I can tell you that the average claim is somewhere between, the average damage award is somewhere between $30,000 and $100,000. Most people come to these issues with American notions of what libel claims are, where the damage awards from juries are millions. That's never been the tradition here.
And you're seeking this from Mr. Lapone or NPA?
From both. They're both named. Yeah.
Just one question in the back.
Can you just clarify again specifically what the libel suit is related to?
Yes, it's the allegation of corruption by Mr. Lapone and NPA repeatedly directed towards the plaintiffs. And if you need the text, we've got extra copies of the actual text that we're relying on, but that's the, they talk about the sting of the libel. What part of the statements that's objectionable constitutes the sting? What did you the most damage? And for the plaintiffs, the sting of the libel was corruption.
And this was
allegation of corruption.
within interviews that he gave in addition to advertisements?
In statements, interviews he gave to the Vancouver province, in other interviews, and in addition, the material that he put on the NPA website. And if you look at the text, it gradually got worse as the campaign went on and more offensive. But the corruption allegation was a constant theme from beginning to end, and it was invented. It wasn't in Mr. Mackin's material. It wasn't in the initial, any of the initial material, but it surfaced very quickly and was disseminated very quickly with the addition. It's interesting, you don't often see this, but the material in the website, the libelous material, had hot links to various social media so that you could just click on them and immediately send it or post it. And so the damage is quite extraordinary, and the breadth of publication, we can only guess at. I've not begun to look at that, except that probably by this time, tens of thousands of people would have read it. And it's still there, despite the fact that we've been under the earlier lawsuit for some weeks. It's still there. It's not been taken down. So the damage continues to amount.
We have one more question here and then there, and then we're gonna have to wrap up. 2 more questions.
You said yourself that corruption charges tend to stick, regardless of what happens. If you're fighting a lengthy legal battle for maybe $30,000, why bother?
Because the success in a libel case redresses a lot of the damage that the corruption allegation does. And if we're successful, and I anticipate we will be in a court finding that that was absolutely untrue and unjustified, that judgment from the Superior Court of this province will go a great distance to undoing the damage and ensuring that the allegation does not in fact stay.
Are you seeking an apology? It didn't.
We would love an apology.
Would you drop the suit in case of an apology?
I don't believe so, but we haven't asked for an apology. We don't anticipate that degree of goodwill from the defendants. But we would withdraw, given the thinking at this point in time. But just as a generalization, apologies do go some distance to reducing a damage award. And so when we act for a defendant in libel cases, that's one of the first things we look at. Is it untrue? And if it is, would a quick apology resolve matters? And most often it does. But there's no question in our minds they're not prepared to apologize, given that they've left it up. And we're not prepared to drop the lawsuit, although it would have an effect on damages.
So one more question, then we're gonna have to get back to it.
Why now? Can you speak to the delay of the few weeks?
Well, there are a number of reasons. I can tell you this, that we wrestled with the issue of whether to sue. Once we saw the first publication, we began to have discussions amongst ourselves and consider what we were going to do. And then matters got worse and worse and worse as the number of publications increased. And we became more and more concerned. And then I made my recommendations, and then CUPE, you must understand, is an extraordinarily democratic union, and it consults its members, some would say endlessly, but quite properly and repeatedly, and it wanted to consult very, very broadly about this issue because of the importance to CUPE. And that was in large measure the reason for the delay. In addition, it wanted to take a measure. It didn't want to do anything if there was no damage. It wanted to take a measure of what impact this had on it, because a number of the larger locals in the province are about to begin engaging in collective bargaining. So it wanted to assess the damage in that context as well. Once it completed that consultation with its members and the assessment of the damage, it made its decision. And this was made, I think, just a few days ago, and we decided on the format and how we would go about it.
Just real quickly, why haven't you sued the province, the publisher of this?
Well, that's an interesting question, and it's one raised by the defendants in the Vision litigation. And there's a number of quick answers, but the quick answer is a plaintiff who has been liable is entitled to sue whoever they wish. And there's no obligation, as the statement of defense of the defendants in the other case implies, to sue everybody or anyone other than the person you've chosen. So that was, we wanted to get to the source of the libel. That's the first point. The second point is CUPE could become bankrupt if it took the course of suing everyone who's now put this on their website or on the blog or published it. So it was a practical matter and a realistic matter. It simply didn't want to do that. I guess the third reason, if I could add a third one, is it wants the debate to stop about the allegation of corruption, because it's not corrupt. But it has no desire to stop or chill the debate about campaign financing. It views it politically as an extremely healthy development. And so launching massive lawsuits across the province might well have that effect of chilling this very healthy debate. So I think those are the reasons that went through my client's mind.
It's a good note to end off. So thanks very much for everyone for coming. Enjoyed it. If you just want to check that out, you're more than welcome. And thanks again, everyone, for coming.